Night reaction with myself, Steve-O, and this very special guest, Kieran, and the key word being there, late. As you can see, Kieran isn't on camera. That's nothing to do with him. That's down to something that's happened my end. For whatever reason, his camera will not show up. So, unfortunately, it's just going to be audio from Kieran. But he's just explained to me he's kind of happy with that. For reasons that I don't need to go into. And I'm going to just put the question out here right now. We're 43 minutes late tonight. What could you have done in 43 minutes? Kieran, I'm going to ask you straight away that question. What could you have done in 43 minutes? I'll give you my answer. I could have watched an episode of Game of Thrones.
That's a good answer. To be honest, recently at this time of the night, 43 minutes, I'd probably spend procrastinating, looking on Twitter to find people going through worse weeks than I am.
Did you say procrastinate? What?
Procrastinating? There we are. Let's get it out the right word.
Right.
Use a big word and use it incorrectly, Kieran.
I was going to say, this isn't a total Steve-O podcast, so we're going to try and keep it clean. So you procrastinate over... Please continue, Kieran.
Well, no, I just, look, there's a lot of things that you could do in 43 minutes, but whilst everyone was waiting for us, I got to enjoy you and your frustrations with technology. So, yeah, I'd prefer that, to be honest. That was a good 43 minutes for me.
God almighty. Well, I'm just going to quickly say hello to a few people in the chat while they've been waiting around patiently. Sparta's been here, Dan, Andrew Ferguson, Kick Your Ass TV. Ray Qureshi's here, and yet, ironically, he said he couldn't join us. And what do you think's going on there, Kieran? The fact that Ray said he wasn't able to join me tonight, and yet here he is live in the chat. What do you think about that?
Oh, it's typical Ray, isn't it? He doesn't want to commit to anything. He hopes that a better offer comes along, and then he finds himself sitting by himself alone on a Saturday night watching us.
There we are. This is what this
Love
show's
you, Ray.
about. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Matthew Zaishi's here. Sush is here. Boona, yes. Did you see that? You must have seen that this morning, Kieran.
I was watching it live. And Boona was giving it all away. All Tom had to do was look left, and Tom would have realised what was going on. But the fact that Tom was in the studio and still got Boona'd by Boona sitting next to him was it was perfection.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. And I mean, Alf is here. And to be honest with you, Alf, you may as well start your stream now, and you can help me with technology. And then we may as well, all three of us, come on with you, because this has just been an absolute disaster. Good Lord. Claire is here. Roberto is here. Yeah, good evening, everybody. No one's answered the...
I've actually got an answer for you for what you can do in 43 minutes. I think Alf actually did his stream earlier at 8 o'clock and has finished it and then joined us for this.
Yeah, that's actually... Do you know what? That's a great answer. That's absolutely spot on. Kieran, I said to you, could you please send me your team? And you said, yeah, no problem, Steve. I'll be more... By the way, actually, no, forget that. Who is Kieran? Who is FPL Discomfort? I know who you are. The people at FPL Juice know who you are. But these idiots at Elite FPL... Oh, can't be saying idiots. These people at Elite FPL... They always complain to me and they go, oh, why doesn't Steve-O introduce who the guest is? It really annoys me. That's true as well. So, Kieran, do you want to explain to the audience that may not know who you are? Tell them who you are.
Who I am? I'm someone who got dragged into obsessing over FPL during the pandemic, was never very good at it, now spend far too much time researching it, to still not be very good at it, but enjoy talking about it. And quite frequently, I'm the kind of person who I'll put out a bold statement on places like Twitter. There'll be ones people don't like, and they'll be presented as more factual than opinionated because it's fun. And I'm someone who will have a bit of fun playing this game. But yeah, someone who I love football. I love this community, to be honest. I know it's got its downsides, but I just enjoy talking football. I enjoy looking at games that I wouldn't care about otherwise. Like, what else are we going to do on a Monday than watch Fulham play Brentford, right? It kind of gives us something to do. So yeah, I'm someone who, talks a lot of football, but honestly, not that great. And hopefully no one on here is to, hoping for any great insights or advice in terms of how they can have a fantastic FPL season, because, we'll come on to my team at some point, Steve-O. But yeah, not the person to be taking advice off right now.
I think you're doing a disservice to yourself, because actually, because you didn't mention one critical thing I was kind of hoping you were mentioning, is that you do the Double Pivot podcast with Shane. Do you want to just tell the audience about that?
See, that's where I'm really bad. I don't publicise things, do I? I'm not very good at that part. I talk myself down instead of up. Yeah, Shane, great guy from up in Scotland. We've got our own podcast where, look, neither of us proclaim to be great at FPL, which is two guys who like talking football and like trying to do things. We have very, very different opinions on things, which just makes it more enjoyable. So yeah, it's just similar to you and Jace. It's guys who like talking football, like pulling up some stats, pretending we know what we're talking about, and then ending up giving probably better advice than we ever take ourselves. When we look at what we do, we sort of look back at episodes and go, we said that person would be good. Like, yeah, cool. Didn't do it though, did we? Like, we had no interest in them. So yeah, Shane and I have this podcast, started it this year, and definitely been enjoying it.
Well, I think Roberto sums it up brilliantly. You're being very modest. I think that I'll say he is like, I think you are being modest, because whenever I do get the opportunity to listen into your podcast, you and Shane have a legitimately a very intellectual discussion about your predictions. I find it genuinely really, really interesting the way you talk about how, I'm just going to make this up now, about how Wolves are really weak down on the left-hand side, which means that the player that's playing on the right-hand side for Crystal Palace, they'll be able to exploit this particular area and whatnot. And I've always wanted to ask you or Shane this, but as you've just mentioned about you giving really good advice but not taking your own, do you find that with your predictions they do actually come to fruition, or what you discuss on the show actually none of it actually happens whatsoever?
Shane is a lot better at the week-to-week predictions. He's accuracy for correct scores. Like last week, he got 3 out of 10 correct scores right, which is just ridiculous. And he has been absolutely slaughtering me this season due to those correct scores. So he's very good at those, and he's someone who he sees weaknesses in teams better than I do, and I think that they're smaller than they are, but he actually sees them, and he's really good at that. I think I'm guilty of someone who, I love the tactics of football. I love managers. I love how they approach a game. I love how I think they can win the game. And the problem with that is I'm not a football manager, and I'm thinking how a football manager will work. And of course, they might have a completely different game plan. So I think that's where Shane has the edge. I'd say pre-season is where I've had the edge. A lot of the pre-season pods we did, a lot of the teams we were talking about there and how we thought they'd start the season, that's come to fruition, and that's been sort of satisfying, right? I think for all of us, when you say something that not many other people are saying, and then you look back on it, it's really nice to see when those things are happening. So yeah, I'm probably better at that long-term aspect. Shane's a lot better at that week-to-week aspect.
I'm just going to quickly go through my team, because it's nice to be on stream with someone who I thought I was having it bad, but well, like I said, we'll come on to you, Kieran, in a minute, because I now feel top of the world thanks to you. Thank you. I knew there was a reason why I brought you on. It's not just because you're very good at what you do. It's because you make me feel good. You make me feel good about everything.
It's what I'm here for. It's why I'm here in this community. If you're having a bad week, talk to Kieran.
So the players I've had play today, I'm not going to go into the players who I've got left until later, but Kanate, broken arm. Yuri, for once, he didn't get any attacking returns, so 2 points. No, in fact, no, he didn't. He got 1 point. I've just forgot because he conceded 2 goals. Rico Lewis, the player that Pep Guardiola said we cannot drop him, gets dropped. For Kyle Walker, who's supposed to be injured, gets 1 point. Haaland, captain. In fact, we'll go into that in a minute. Delap, 2 points. Cunha got 6. He didn't get a bonus point, did he?
Yeah, he got 1.
Wow. Oh, brilliant. Cunha 6. Oh. Excellent there. And then on to these two. Salah and Haaland. Now, you just mentioned 2 seconds ago about taking your own advice, and I said literally at the start of the season, I will be taking my own advice. I'm not going to be swayed by others and listen to what other people are saying. I'm just going to stick to my gut. And guess what, Kieran? I haven't done any of that whatsoever this season. I kind of have, but unfortunately it's backfired to where, for instance, this particular game week, I was swapping and changing between Haaland and Salah, and I left it on Salah. Now, the story goes is that whenever I listen into Streamception, I'm about an hour behind because it just gets me through the first hour and a half at work, essentially, before Mark Goldbridge streams live whatever the 12:30 kickoff is, if there is one, which there usually is. So I'm an hour behind with Streamception. And I had the captaincy on somebody out of Salah and Haaland, but I just couldn't remember who. And I get to work, and it's in real time, it's 5 to 11. But in the time I'm listening to Streamception, it's only like quarter to 10, for instance. And they're chatting away and everything about Haaland and Salah, and I just said to myself, I just have this feeling that Haaland is going, because they're talking about people selling Haaland, and I thought, all those people selling Haaland, I bet you he does what he was supposed to, what we all thought he was going to do against Southampton. And Salah, who got something against Arsenal, is probably going to blank. So I played that stupid, clever game of, rather than sticking to what I said literally the day before, which is Salah's history is really good against Brighton, I'm captaining Salah, I switched it to Haaland. And when listening into Mark Goldbridge today, again, I was 45 minutes behind real life action. And when it got to the last 15 minutes of the 3 o'clock kickoffs, and I just knew in my head, once Salah had scored, I just knew Haaland's going to be doing nothing. He ain't going to be doing anything whatsoever. So I just thought, stuff it. Came off it all, went straight to livescore.com, saw that the results ended 2-1 to bloody Bournemouth and 2-1 to Liverpool with Salah scoring. And I'm not going to lie, Gary, FPL Have a Beer? I don't know if you've been watching any of his interviews at all. I don't know if
I have been watching some of them, yeah. They've been good.
Okay. Well, I'll be appearing on one of them at some point. We just need to arrange a day. And I've already I haven't messaged him directly, but I will be telling him that, our interview's probably going to go on for about 3 hours. But anyway, and the one thing that he talks about is how does FPL affect you from a mental health point of view? And for me, I get this real horrible, anxious stomach feeling where I'm kind of pretty much wanting to punch something, because all I'm thinking is, why the fuck didn't I just go for the captaincy choice that I said for the past week? I said captain and Salah. I was on Alf's stream. I'm captaining Salah, mate. He's got the best history. Da 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 da. And then it gets to the final day. I just kind of question myself and just kind of go against what I've been saying all along. And then when the outcome turns out to be, I was right all along, but I just didn't go through with the actual captaincy, I'm just there like, I want to fucking smash the locker room. It's ludicrous. And then the thought process turns into, I've lost out on, now has Salah got 2 or 3 bonus points? I thought he was only on 2. Has it turned to 3? No, it is 2. I say to myself, I've missed out on 7 points. So if you include, so Salah got 9, Haaland got 4, double to 18, and then you deduct the 9 away plus the 2 for Haaland's captaincy, it comes down to 7. I've missed out on 7 points, and it kind of brings me down to some kind of calmness level within reason. But to make myself feel even worse, Kieran, I decided to do some maths, which I messaged Ray about, which I didn't want to do. So, talking of my gut instinct, so 2 weeks ago when Saliba got that red card, I said, right, I'm just going to do Saliba to Vardiol, done, and that's it. Then again, I tried to be too clever and get on the bandwagons and go, nope, I'm going to bring in 8 Newry and I'm going to bring in Foden because I expect City to do really well against Southampton and I expect that Foden could do really, really well and that could push me up the ranks. We all know what happened there. That maths for just that game week in game week 9 involved me getting rid of Saka and not bringing in Vardio, and that cost me 18 points. In fact, forget that. That's cost me 13 points, just that alone. In fact, not even that. It's actually cost me even more than that. No, it has. No, I've done the maths right. It's 13 points. And then this week, if I'd have just left the team as it was with Vardiol in and Captain Salah, that's 16. Essentially, if I'd have just done exactly what I said I was going to do, Captain Salah, bring in Vardiol, leave Saka in the team, I'd have got 34 points total. Instead, with the moves I've done, I've got a total of 10, so I've missed out on 24 points. If I'd have done nothing, I'd have been up to I'd be at about 190k. Instead, I've dropped down to 1.2 million, and it is just sickening, Kieran, to be honest with you. So, I'm just wondering, mate, if when I bring up your team in 2 seconds, if you can make me feel any better about what I've done.
I think I definitely will, and I think like something I saw. So last week, as an example, I ended up taking a -8, which this is the season where you can roll transfers, right? And I ended up taking a -8. Now, it worked out, and it ended up netting me positive 22 points. Now, this isn't me, trying to make you feel worse before we make you. Well, it is before we make you feel better. That then took my season transfer gained points to -10. So my moves this season have cost me 10 points. If I did nothing the entire season, I'd be in a better place. My wild card in the week I wildcarded, my non-wildcard team would have outscored it. And I think it's so many fine margins in the game this season. And I think that's what it's determined by, right? Like you were saying, you've had Haaland, you captained him this week. It was another week where his XG was over 1. I have Haaland as well, and I had Foden. And the last 2 weeks, with what Foden had created for Haaland, both of them should have hauled. And we'd be, having a different conversation. So I think it's really easy to be results oriented, particularly when that is literally what this game is about. But yeah, I don't know. I do find it interesting with you going back to the mental health thing. I think I used to be impacted a lot more by this game.
Yeah,
I'd say a couple of years ago. And recently, it's one of those where it's the same with Twitter or anything else that's on your phone. The great thing about it is if you close it, it doesn't exist unless you look at it.
Do you know what?
That's what I spend most of my weeks and weekends doing. Go, nope, doesn't exist. I refuse to believe this is a real thing right now.
We'll get into that, actually. We'll get into that discussion, actually, in 2 seconds, because I just need to read out your team. So we've got Sanchez in goal, Mikalenko. Sorry, I just want to go for the players, actually, that's played today. So Mikalenko, 8 Newry. Mikalenko 2, 8 Newry 1, Trent Alexander-Arnold 2, Foden 2, McNeil 2, Delap, you guessed it, 2, and then Haaland in theory 2, 4 doubled. And you've got Visser and Burmo, Sanchez and Palmer left. Nice selection of players left. A simple question for you, Kieran, before I ask you the follow-up question is, firstly, which player are you, player/players are you most disappointed with for your team this week? And secondly, just go through your day, because you said you were busy with, I don't know how much you want to divulge into, but you said you were going to be busy today, and how did you consume today's football results?
So, I guess, to cover things off, I'm an Arsenal fan, so I got to enjoy my morning by watching my team on TV, put in the worst performance I've seen from us for a number of years. I don't mind losing games. I do mind when the team you support make no effort to win games. And that's very much what I spent that part of the day done. And then 3 o'clock kickoffs, I managed to find ways to view the first half of the Man City game and have sort of Soccer AM or whatever it is, Sky Sports News on in the background. And then actually I went down to an event in Old Street, a One London event. That was a Serie A event that had Christian Vieri there and a few other people. So I popped down there for an hour or so and then stood outside refreshing my phone, because for anyone who is unfortunate or fortunate enough to follow me on Twitter, I went on a bit of a rampage against Cunha. And then spent the time going, please don't haul. Please don't haul today. You can haul next week because people will forget about it. But you can't go on Steve-O and Elite FPL straight after Cunha hands it to you on a plate. And, you know, I was talking to a friend at the event, said I might have to stop off at Tesco on the way home to pick up a humble pie to eat on stream. So, no, fortunate that I didn't have to do that. But, yeah, I guess that's how I've consumed the football today. I am looking forward to Match of the Day to see the Haaland miss, to see all of my other players fail to return at any points. But tomorrow's Sunday, and hopefully my players on Sunday perform well. They can't perform worse than my players on Saturday, really. Well, I'm saying that they can get sent off, so maybe they can. But hopefully I get a player that scores more than 2 points tomorrow.
And you mentioned the mental health side of things and whatnot. Oh. Sorry, I was just checking my betting slips, and actually I've done quite well today, a lot better than I actually expected, so that's quite good. I'm a pound, in fact, I'm a pound 26 down from my original thing, but that ain't bad. I'm quite happy with that, actually. Anyway, I digress. So when you're, you know, up trying to see what's happening within all the football and everything, how are you actually mentally feeling as you're consuming however you're consuming the results? How are you actually mentally feeling and processing the information? Because like I said, for me, I'm at work, but I've just got this constant stomach of just spiraling out of control, and anything that kind of has gone against me in the sense of what I kind of predicted would go that way, but I didn't back my gut, I get really, 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 really angry. How does it process for you? Yeah,
I'd say it's so dependent on the situation. So without a doubt, if I'm by myself, then FPL can have a significantly larger impact on me. You know, if I'm sitting at home on a weekend and things aren't going my way, then I don't really have anything else to focus on in that moment. And therefore, FPL is that all-consuming thing that will dictate my emotions for probably longer than it should after. What I found is quite useful is, you know, not making that the entirety of my weekend and ensuring that, whether it's with family, like last season as an example, I had another moment where I said, you know, Ollie Watkins wouldn't do well against Sheffield United because strikers don't. And instead of just not captaining him, I moved him out of my team and then drove down to see family. And it turned out I also managed to bench boost that weekend, and Ollie Watkins ended up getting a goal and a hat-trick of assists to absolutely haul. And I'd accidentally bench boosted on my drive down there. Now, if I'd been at home that weekend and seen that, I would have struggled, but I was surrounded by my family. So I kind of looked at it and went, well, I can either care about this or I can just put it away and it doesn't exist, and I'm back in the real world with people. And I think that's one of those components, because yes, in the FPL bubble, you know, if someone says, how was your weekend? Or Captain Haaland and he blanked, they know how you feel. But if you say that to someone else at work, they'll go, sorry, what? And it kind of brings that realization to it all of, this game will impact you as much as you allow it to. You know, you do dictate your emotions and your responses, and it's okay to be upset or annoyed for a period of time, but it's your decision as to how long you're going to be upset and annoyed for. And that's what I just try and remind myself whenever it is a bad week. I'll just go, look, you know, if it's upsetting me that much, go and find something else to do. Find anything that's got nothing to do with football. Don't watch Match of the Day if you've had a bad game week. Don't put yourself through the torment of seeing the what ifs. Instead, go, right, what else do I enjoy? What brings me happiness? Let's invest time into that now, because the other element's not giving me joy right now.
Yeah, I for me, whether people believe this or not, the one thing I do enjoy about streaming with someone, like, trust me, if I'm the one thing that me and Ray discuss a lot, and more specifically Ray says to me, is I'm so proud that you're not doing solo streams. If you couldn't join me tonight, if I couldn't find someone else to replace Ray essentially for this Saturday night, then basically I'm not doing tonight. it's very, very, I'm telling you now, it's very difficult for me to put that flag in the sand and say I'm not doing it, because inside I want to vent my frustrations and just chat about what's happened. But also there's this thing of like, all that happens with me is that I just get more and more angry and angry and angrier. And I'm not going to lie, right now I've just looked at the comments and I'm already getting annoyed by it, so I'm just not going to read the comments. It's quite simple really, because some of the comments I'm just like, why are you saying that for? Like, what is the need in you saying what you're saying? So I'm just like, just close that off. And for me, when I then speak to someone like yourself, or usually it's Ray, but when I speak to someone like yourself, Shane, Alf, Ray, etc., even Jason, it's kind of like a bit of a therapy session. Because like you just mentioned about, if you say to a member of the FPL community, how are you feeling? And then you just say, oh, I captain Haaland, there's, oh, I know you're feeling. Whereas if you say it to a normal member of the public, even if they're like the biggest football fan on the planet, they're just going to look at you like, what? And it kind of puts on the realization of actually, yeah, it really doesn't matter. But for when we do these streams, it's certainly for me a therapeutic session where I get to speak to somebody that has a very intelligent outlook on FPL/football in general, and it just makes me feel like, actually, I can just forget about the point side of things. We can discuss what's happened, but I'm just going to feel good after the stream and go, do you know what? I've had a really good conversation with Kieran, and actually I can forget about the fact that Haaland did fuck all essentially, and I missed out on 7 points. And that's something that I do say to myself, actually, it's I missed out on 7 points at the end of it. And like you quite rightly stated, when you are in a circumstance like me and you are today, where we've done absolutely pants, it is just switching off. Now I know me and you are doing a stream right now, but we can switch off. And by pure coincidence today, when your game was on between Newcastle and Arsenal, one of the guys come up to me and was speaking about something very, very personal. And that went on for about 20-25 minutes. And at first I was thinking, I need to do the bins, mate. I'm kind of wanting to get on with the job. And then after a while, I kind of realised how serious the circumstances were with what he was talking to me about. And then all the thoughts about Newcastle, Arsenal and doing the bins completely went away. And I thought, I've got a bloke here literally crying in front of me, and all my attention is focused on him and speaking to him about his problems. And not once did I think about, at that point, Newcastle, Arsenal and the job at hand, because it was more important me talking through with a mate the personal situation that he's going through. And yeah, I do think you're completely right that with anybody listening into this that does get that allows FPL to ruin their weekend, so to speak, I think that it is a case of, just like you said, 100% switch off your phone and just avoid anything to do with FPL. Secondly, go and do something that will definitely, almost certainly take your mind off it. Like, what's your favourite TV show? What's the next episode? Right, get on with that. You know, for me, it is literally The Bill. I'll just watch an episode of The Bill about some immigrant that has held his hands up to a murder he didn't commit. Well, by the end of the episode, I completely forgot that FPL even existed. It just completely just disappeared, because I was just so focused on this storyline about a murder of somebody that happened months and months ago. And then my friend came upstairs and we just chatted and everything. And then by the time it got to about 6:15 and I had 2 seconds to myself, I was like, oh yeah, it's Wolves versus Crystal Palace. I may as well just click on the score and see what it is. And then you just get sucked into this mindset of like, of course, Larson scores. I mean, he won me a bet, but Larson scores. Oh, Cunha got me the assist. And then I'm like, I've then completely forgotten about everything that happened in 3 o'clock kickers, and I'm just focusing on the Cunha thing. And yeah, like I say, I don't know about for you and Shane, whether you, or specifically for you, do you find doing your podcast therapeutic?
I think it can be, definitely. I think just to go back to your wider point, right? That ability to vent your frustrations with people who understand them is good. And that ability to also have someone like you have with Jason, I have with Shane and a few other people. And you know, we both have with Ray, who doesn't play FPL anymore, but is great for banter, for telling you you're an idiot when you've made a mistake or done something, because sometimes that is the fun, right? You want one of your friends to go, why did you do that? Yeah, I know. And then you explain yourself and they just laugh at you and you're like, yeah, I can laugh at myself as well. So yeah, I think whether it's a podcast, whether it's jumping onto a Twitter space, whether it's just venting your frustrations in a tweet or calling a friend, I think having that out is incredibly valuable in a game that can really impact your mental health. So I think, you know, having that ability to have someone to soundboard off of who you know has gone through what you've gone through and will understand that, yes, this has impacted you more than it really should for a game, but we're all competitive at the end of the day. And, you know, it's the same for anything. I don't know about you, but I tend to get banned from playing family game nights because I'm too competitive. And when they start helping my sister out by giving her clues, who's older than me, by the way, I literally still, at 36 years old, I'm like, wait, why are you helping her? What's going on here? She's an idiot. Let her lose. So, like, it's those components, right? We're competitive and we're competitive with ourselves. And I don't think any of us beat ourselves up when a player we weren't thinking of does well. But to your point, it's that dilemma of, oh, I was going to go here, but I listened to XYZ, who I spoke to as a mate, and I'm not blaming them, but I respect their opinion and I weighted my decision towards it. And, you know, they're the moments that hurt you more, not doing that transfer, not captaining the player you wanted to, not starting the player you wanted to, hurt way more than the things you've never considered. So arguably, you know, I've got people at work who play and spend little time on this whatsoever. And therefore, they don't understand who the other good options are. They haven't thought about 20 different players through the week. So when 19 of them score, apart from the one they picked, they don't have any impact on it going, oh, I thought about bringing in Dibbling or I thought about bringing in Mateus Nunes. They're going, why would you bring in that player? I've just got this one. So it's a time investment, right? The more time you invest in anything, the more, to an extent, entitled to doing well we all feel. And when it doesn't work, you need someone who can kind of remind you, game of luck, mate. There is no entitlement. There's next week. You know, forget about it. Move on.
Yeah, I must say that with FPL Have a Beer's channel and his interviews that he's doing, the guy that he had on, well, literally yesterday, I forget the bloody guy's name to bring up right now, FPL MV or something like that, I think his handle is. But he was making it funny you bring up about the fact of blaming, not necessarily blaming, but listening to others and potentially influencing what you've done, and then blaming that person for kind of changing your thought process. Yeah, FPL MV. He was making the point that just essentially go with your own personal gut instincts and your own personal plans, because it's not going to feel as bad as like you literally just said, which is, oh, speaking to Ray, my consultant, and I mean, ironically, he did say after the event, as in, when the deadline passed, I messaged him to say, I have gone with Haaland in the end because it's just, for me, it's just the safety captaincy. At my rank, it's just the safety. And he went, to be honest, I probably would have captained Salah. Now, if I'd have had that conversation, for argument's sake, 10 minutes prior to deadline, because I respect Ray's opinion, I probably would have gone, oh, you've gone Salah? All right, then, I'll put it on Salah. But if Salah blanked and then Haaland does well, I'm then thinking, Ray, you fucking, like, you know, but instead, it's actually Ray had the same thought process as me, which is Captain Salah. Now, Ray's reasonings may be completely different to mine. Mine being the history says that Salah does well against Brighton, so just Captain Salah. Whereas Ray's could have been, well, he's at home, he's up against a team which play a high line, which in turn means that Salah can take advantage of this, and this. Overall, we both came to the same conclusion. That's why with the transfers, when we go through them, we both pretty much come to the same conclusion. And funny enough, Kieran, my immediate gut instinct transfers are Mazraoui in for Dunk because I want to attack Man United, and then Dibbling to Garnacho. What's your immediate, and that'd be for a -4. What's your immediate reaction to that before I give you what Ray thought?
So, Amorim is a coach I really, really, really like, and I think starting with him because obviously it's the context of Man U players. As a right wing back in an Amorim system, Mazraoui will be way more of a right winger, and he fits the profile for it. I'd recommend people to go and look at like Sporting Lisbon and see what their right and left backs return goal wise. It's good. It's very good. So like Mazraoui, I really, really, really like as an option. In terms of Garnacho, see, my concern about Garnacho is the formation, because the most natural position that Garnacho would fit and we never know if a manager will go like for like in terms of what they look to implement at a club. But if he were to, then Garnacho doesn't work as one of those players supporting the striker in Højlund, because that's probably going to be a Bruno and a Rashford or a Xerxes or even an Anthony in a crazy world, or even a Mason Mount if you're drunk, right? But all of those are more likely to be in those roles than a Garnacho. That it kind of limits Garnacho's position to the left wing back position, which sounds scary. But again, the wing backs are more wingers. They're on the same line of the pitch as the midfielders rather than as the three centre backs. So like, I really like Mazraoui. Garnacho's the one who I don't see a world that he's dropped in. I just don't know how he fits into it. But at his price, it's definitely worth the gamble. So yeah, like my views are, I actually agree with you. Like, these are good fixture swings for Man U coming up. Amorim is a coach that, with the players you've named, they're the kind of players I'm looking at as well. I think, I throw Højlund in as the only other Man U player that I'm considering, just because Amorim systems are set up to basically tell the striker, you stay where you are, we'll get you the ball, as we see with Gyökeres. So yeah, no, I like them as an option. I like Mazraoui more than Garnacho, but I think they're both good options, mate.
Yeah, because the spanner in the work was then, as I joked, but it's true, is that Konate then goes and breaks his arm today. And I'm thinking, I've got no defenders. I've got Lewis and 8 Nuri. That is all I've got. So my next immediate thought process, and I know anybody listening to this is going to scream and say, don't do it, which I'm not going to. But my immediate reaction was Dunk and Konate to Mazraoui and De Ligt. Now, I don't like it. I'm not just going to sit and pretend that is like my favoured move. Mazraoui is somebody who I'm after tomorrow's game against Chelsea, which I expect Man United to win. I'm then going to be looking at how, because I know this new manager is going to be in the stands. Is that right, Kieran, for Man United?
I don't know about that. Maybe.
Because aren't they playing on Saturday, Sporting Lisbon or something? I thought he was going to be in the stands for their game on Sunday. Or is it going to be the following week, you reckon?
It could well be. I know he's due to be here for the 11th, I think is his first day. But yeah, right, okay. He could well have flown over, right? As in, there's nothing to say that he wouldn't fly over to watch his club play tomorrow. So yeah.
Right, okay. So then let's just say, for argument's sake, he's not actually here then. Because isn't he supposed... Haven't they asked him to stay for one more match? Isn't that right?
Yeah, so like what I read about it is he actually... So at the start of the season, he informed them that this would be his last season with the club. And Man U came and paid the fee. And he was like, can you guys wait till the end of the season? And was told it's now or never. So that's what took the time, because the club had already accepted it. So no one has asked him to stay. I think what part of the delays are is obviously we left the European Union. So he has to get a visa to be able to be processed, which I think is between 5 days and 3 weeks, depending on whether or not you want to pay the fee. And I imagine with the international break, United probably went, yeah, we're paying 10 million already. Probably not, right? But as in, yeah, from what I've heard, it's just the fact where all of the process and all the paperwork's why the 11th is kind of that logical period, because it also brings him in just before that international break or around that time to work with some of the players.
Yeah, and like I state, for me, Mazraoui, and in fact, ironically, it was you the kind of backed up my thought process about bringing in Mazraoui into my team after listening to what you said on Double Pivot, and you've kind of just reinforced what you just said just then. And then I've got the problem is that the Konate and Greaves issue, and I then think to myself, I'm definitely not going to be taking a -8. That's just suicide. So I'm thinking, do I just do the Mazraoui in for Dunk, and it's done at this point? Because Konate, I've got at 5.1. He's 5.3, so I can literally wait until he drops down to 5.1 to be losing any value on him whatsoever, which is good from my perspective. So Konate isn't really an emergency fire. Lewis Dunk is, from the point of view that he's probably going to go down in price. So, but yeah, the Mazraoui and Garnacho in for a -4, Kieran. I really like it. And that's the exact money as well. Because it means I'm upgrading Dibbling, but I also get to keep Rodgers as well, who can be benched for the next 3.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. I think they do sound good, don't they? I think you raised another player there that I'm definitely going to be monitoring in Delit, because, again, logically, his passing range is ridiculous. Like, he ranks very, very, very high amongst other centre-backs for his pass accuracy and passes attempted and pass completion. And I think, again, it's one of those about, do you want to take the risk and go early on players, or do you want to see if what we think will happen actually happens? Because Amarin plays direct to the strikers, particularly from that central centre-back, and someone like Delit, who had a pretty decent goal-scoring record as well.
Yeah.
Before joining Man United, it does feel like an exciting one, and less of that rotation risk. But, you know, that world of taking a hit for 2 defenders does seem suicidal. Whereas, like you said, sort of that upgrade of Dibbling's a great player. I don't fully understand why he's not starting week in, week out for Southampton, because it's not as if they've got so much talent there that they don't need to be playing him. And that's where the concern is. If he's just going to be benched week after week, then your 5th option or your 8th attacker is someone who is going to be that first on your sub bench every week, who you're not that particularly excited bringing off. Whereas what you were hoping for is someone you could rotate with other players from time to time. So it does solve that problem for you, and it fixes that defensive issue as well.
Well, FPL Gary is actually here. FPL Alabia Gary, we've been actually talking very high praise of your last few videos, and yeah, with the thing is, because my team has got those injuries in Konate and Greaves and Dunk, who are all out. Konate is going to be out for at least 6 weeks minimum, if not longer. And Man United, those next 3, Leicester, Ipswich, Everton. Now, I know that the attack play will be a Fernandes/Garnacho, if not both. But let's be real here. Fernandes will be number 1, Garnacho 2, and then it will be jumping on a defender. And I, like me and you are both agreeing, Mazraoui and Delit are really good shouts. And I'm thinking, could I do for next week a double Man United defence? So Mazraoui and Konate out, who are both 0 points, for Mazraoui and Delit versus Leicester, and the possibility of a double clean sheet, Kieran. If not, it would just be Mazraoui/Delit with Lewis and Aït-Nouri for free. Because Ray said it's not worth doing a hit for Mazraoui and Garnacho in for a hit. But like I say, I like chasing the upside. I know it backfired with Foden and Aït-Nouri, like it backfired, but I'm not going to be playing Dibbling. And next week, Aston Villa are away at Liverpool. I don't want to be playing Rodgers particularly, but I could play Garnacho against Leicester.
It does scream upside, doesn't it?
It does.
Well, and it comes back to it goes back to our earlier point about the mental health, right? If put yourself in the future when you're looking at things, and what's going to frustrate you more? Owning those two players next week and United winning 2-1, with Garnacho maybe getting an assist, or not owning them and seeing United win 4-1 and Garnacho's got a goal and assist.
You are exactly kind of proving the point that this FPL MV has made, and the point of what I was just making a minute ago, which is my gut instinct, which I've been saying I'm going to be doing all season, is telling me this: Mazraoui and Garnacho in for Dunk and Dibbling for a -4, but the exact money. They're playing Leicester, for crying out loud. It's the first home fixture in the Premier League. Oh no, it won't be. It'll be the second home fixture in the Premier League that Man United will be playing, but it's a good fixture. It's Leicester. Then they've got Ipswich and Everton.
Mm-hmm.
And to be completely frank with you, I said this to Ray as well. I really don't want to get rid of Mbeumo. I think getting rid of Mbeumo, again, from a ranking point of view, is not good. But it's potentially the only way I could get to Fernandes. Potentially. And having that triple up of Man U for maybe even the Ipswich away and Everton at home, and then just moving forward with, okay, Arsenal away is a horrible fixture, Nottingham Forest at home. Well, the way Nottingham Forest at the moment, they're probably going to win against Man U, but then Man City away. I think that, because even Jason thinks Garnacho's the better pick over Fernandes. And I'm just thinking, having two Man United players for those three, Leicester, Ipswich, Everton, it ain't bad, because then, of course, Ray's making the point that I'm going to be wanting at some point to be then jumping on Arsenal very, very soon. Now, for me personally, jumping on Arsenal, I've just seen here in the chat from, I'm sure it was Shax. Yeah, it was. He says here, I don't want to hear any more how good Arsenal are. We all know now they are pants. Now, we'll let you answer that comment in a minute, Kieran. But for me, jumping on Arsenal is probably, I'd be wanting to look at game week 16, which is the 14th of December. It's all depending on the Odegaard circumstances. But their next fixtures, Chelsea away, horrible. Nottingham Forest at home, it's going to be very, very, very difficult. West Ham away, well, guaranteed 3 points. Although West Ham do turn up in the big fixtures. Man United at home, well, could be anything as we speak now under a new manager. Fulham away, we always know it's tough. But then it's on to the fixtures, the next three from game week 16 onwards, where it's actually, we should be winning quite comfortably here. The likes of Everton at home, Crystal Palace, Ipswich, those three are almost key. So I think getting away from not really jumping on Arsenal, it isn't a must for me. But you as an Arsenal fan, Kieran, going on what Shax has just said about Arsenal being pants in his opinion, what do you think about that statement? And then what do you think about when you're thinking of jumping onto your players?
Yeah, no, look, I think the Odegaard injury is massive, right? Like, Arsenal have not replaced that creativity at all. And what they've been trying to do is become more technically solid in the midfield. A midfield of Rice and Marino is fantastic, but the downside of it is that there's not that much creativity coming from it. And whilst it didn't really change much today, when Ranieri came on, that's more of that like-for-like replacement for what Odegaard offers. And until Odegaard's back, as you rightly pointed out, Steve-O, from an attacking perspective, it's not quite connected. It's not as fluid, and therefore, looking at their attacking options, it's not that exciting. Defense options, when I wildcarded, I moved off of double defense into double attack initially. And the reason being, Arsenal are, with their first choice back five, one of the best defensive teams in Europe. Yep. However, when they're playing against, and particularly if they're playing against Man City or Liverpool or a big team, right? They will not, and they will do everything in their power to try to not give away an easy, cheap goal by lack of concentration around the back. However, when they play a Leicester or a Southampton or a team that they feel a bit more relaxed against, they are guilty of being a bit more lackadaisical in that passing and being punished for it. And that's sort of what steered me away from it. And the last few weeks, I've moved completely off of Arsenal. And I'd sort of then move on to agree with you that, like, if Odegaard's back, it changes the narrative a lot. But until game week 15, there's no need to rush into them when you've got Brighton with great fixtures from game week 12, Spurs with great fixtures from game week 13, West Ham with great fixtures from game week 14. We already have United with good fixtures, Fulham with good fixtures. I'm not going to go as far as saying Wolves with good fixtures when Wolves are the good fixture. But, fundamentally, there are a lot of other options, Brentford as well. So, yeah, I think Saka is possibly someone that I'll consider moving on to sooner than 15. But I won't be necessarily rushing into the other options before then, really.
No, I'm just quickly looking at what you were just saying there about, we will get on just briefly over the games today, but you are completely right. Brighton's fixtures from game week 13, Southampton, Fulham, Leicester, Crystal Palace, West Ham. The way Brighton are playing at the moment, they are going to just absolutely destroy some of them teams. I'm looking at Southampton, Leicester, and potentially even West Ham, those three there. Tottenham... My biggest issue with Tottenham is that their points are shared around 5 different players. Kulusevski, Maddison, Solanke, Johnson and Son. Those 5 players there, the points are just shared no matter what. And it's going to be really interesting to see how Son does tomorrow. Wolves, we can rely on... Well, the 3 popular picks from Wolves are Stroud-Larson, Cunha and 8 Uri. We ain't looking at anybody else. But their run of fixtures... is why where people like myself are jumping on Wolves. Today, we had Crystal Palace, it ends up being 2-2. The team that everybody said, Crystal Palace aren't going to score anything while Eze's out, and they go and get 2 goals today. Southampton, Fulham's the horrible fixture. Bournemouth at home, not great, but it's still a game in which they can score goals. Everton away.
It's a Bournemouth team that have beaten Arsenal and Man City as well, right? And I think they're the things, right, where at home, yeah, and there are big differences there. But they are the fixtures where they look good, but Everton away, as you said there, not a great game. Fulham away, not a great game. West Ham away, not a bad game, but worse than West Ham at home. The Ipswich and Leicester ones are great, and you can't say anything bad about those, and the Southampton one as well. But I do think it's my biggest concern with Wolves genuinely is this is now a run of 21 fixtures dating back to 11 last season where Wolves have won 1 game.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
And there are managers available right now that are free. That you've got to wonder how much more time do they give Gary O'Neill. He's a lovely guy, but 1 win in 21 Premier League games dating back to last season. If you don't win against Southampton, and then you've got decent fixtures, but again, not the greatest in the world. If you don't win against Southampton, then Fulham is do or die. And if not, Bournemouth's do or die, right? So the questions just are will Gary O'Neill still be there for the entirety of these fixture runs? And I guess the secondary question is, how much do you actually think that would impact the players that we're looking at anyway, or the players that we own from there? Because they're not that expensive. It's not a bad risk to take, right? 5.5 mil in a striker is fine. It's $1 million more than the cheapest one that doesn't play.
Just a quick shout out, Connor. Hello everyone. Been busy with work, so I haven't been able to come in recently. But the punter Chris Wood, captain, and he's been bringing in the hauls for me the last 2 or 3 weeks. Yeah, I'm getting sick to death of Chris Wood. I don't know about you, Kieran, but that name every time he pops up, I'm just like, just shut the fuck up.
He just won't stop scoring. It's just unreal.
It is absolutely bizarre, and he's another one. His fixtures, or Nottingham Forest's fixtures, just a score. Newcastle at home, Arsenal, Ipswich, Man City, Man U, Aston Villa, Brentford. On paper, those fixtures are horrific. But defensively, apart from Arsenal and maybe at a push Aston Villa, they all concede goals, and I do include Man City in that. And the way Nottingham Forest seem to set up, to be honest with you, Chris Wood going forward is just a sit and hold, isn't he?
Yeah, you can't sell Chris Wood because what is it? He's been involved in 60 or 70% of their goals this season.
Yeah.
Which it doesn't matter if they don't score that many goals, because if they score, he's probably involved in it. So if there's 2 goals, he might have got 2 goals, and more likely than not, he's been involved in both of those goals. So even in a tough fixture, we're seeing, like, this week was a prime example of it, where not a single team was predicted to score less than 1 goal this game week. Now, if that means that Forest are predicted to score 1 goal every game week, then that means Chris Wood's predicted to score almost a goal most game weeks. So even in those tough fixtures, you know, against Man City, if they do get the ball in the break, or if it is from a set piece and Forest do score, who would you back to score? Chris Wood.
Yeah. That's why I love my 50p bets, because it is just, I mean, funny enough, I've just seen one of the bets that I won for 25p, Kieran. It was Southampton and Wolves both to draw, and that got me on a 25p bet £2.95 back. So
12 to 1, that's great odds.
Yeah. And the thing is that, and I've completely lost my track. Oh yeah, with 50p bets, is that I always put the money on the not only the popular FPL assets, but I also just go, do you know what? If this particular team is going to score, who's the most likely candidate to do it? Like you just said, Chris Wood. Now I know Chris Wood's a popular asset. Of course he is at the moment. But certainly, like you say, he scored, like, you are right, 60% of their goals, which is absolutely absurd. Well, talking of today's fixtures, you said you watched the Newcastle-Arsenal game and you were really, really disappointed with Arsenal. Do you want to just explain to the audience why you were disappointed with Arsenal, and was Newcastle's victory deserved, essentially?
Yeah, I'll start off with, was it deserved? Yes. Arsenal created nothing of note. They had 1 shot on target the entire game, and even that was questionable shot on target, where Marino struck it from about 10 yards out into the back of a defender. And I honestly think that would have been overturned if he had scored, because, yeah, dark arts on set pieces. It was a little bit too much physicality for what VAR looks at, which that's the issue, right? With Arsenal out, they do become overly reliant on set pieces. And as good as they are at set pieces, it is something that teams can prepare for, particularly if they know that's going to be your main route of causing any threat. Like, Arsenal started off well. It was exciting. They were attacking. But then they just stopped, and, like, Newcastle pressed higher. Newcastle controlled the game. Newcastle went for goal quicker. And that's what the frustration is as sort of an Arsenal fan at times, that we've seen it year after year and we think we're over it, where we start to overplay, where we're not as direct. And sort of in the latter stage of the game, in the second half, when it's gone past 60th minute, past 70th minute, you're looking for your players to show a bit more urgency and a bit more desire and to take a few more shots. And just none of that happened. That it went from that moment of having a lot of confidence in Arsenal pre-season into realising that not to fuss or can't put too much blame on injuries in defence, but the fact that Odegaard being out can be that impactful in terms of how we create and showing how much over-reliance he is in connecting everything in that team is scary. And it was just a game where I just didn't see any desire or any urgency to try and get that goal.
I just want to correct myself. It was actually Ipswich and Wolves that I backed at 25p at 2 draws, not Southampton, but anyway, whatever. It's funny you mentioned about the impact of Odegaard being out, because it's a bit of a pattern with a lot of teams, whether you are Arsenal, whether you are Man City, whether you are Wolves or even Everton, is that when one particular player is taken away, it doesn't matter which position it is, but if they're one of the most important figures in your team, it's amazing how results go against you. So, for instance, I mean, I don't know. I mean, you may be able to tell me more. But when did Odegaard go off injured? Can you remember when it was, roughly?
What, as in what game or what minute of a game?
As in what? Yeah, what date roughly? What game was it roughly? Can you remember? Was it the champion? No, it was Norway, wasn't it? International.
It was. Yeah, it was when he was over an international break. He got injured.
That's game week 4, yeah.
It was the second international break. No.
Was it the second international break? Was it?
Yeah. Let me load it up. Hang on. I'll get it on transfer.
Find out, because I'm just. The reason why I'm asking you this is because I'm just wondering what has Arsenal's results been since Odegaard's been out injured, unless you know that off the top of your head.
Oh, it's not been good. He has been injured. Yeah, you're right. Since September the 9th. So, quite a while. We're looking over a month there. And September the 9th would have been game week. You're spot on there. So the results since then have not been good. Like, it's one of those, right, where you put those asterisks on there going, well, they played Man City away, sure. Then beat Leicester, then beat Southampton, and then lost to Bournemouth, drew with Liverpool, and lost.
Hold on. Like, let's not fuck about here. They just about beat Leicester, and what was the score against Southampton again? 3-1 in the end, wasn't it?
Yeah, both of those were the scorelines flatter, right?
Yes,
where 4-2 and 3-1. Yeah, they're flattering scorelines,
yeah.
not comfortable victories.
Yeah, and the Man City games, even actually thinking about it, I mean, I don't know how you feel, but it just angers me that they scored in the last minute, but whatever. It happened. And I still think that was a very, 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 very good result at the end of the day, despite the fact that you were down to 10 men and whatnot. But that's the thing, since Odegaard's been out, it has been, like you quite rightly say, not been particularly brilliant for you guys. And it's the same with Man City. Since Rodri and Kevin De Bruyne have been out the team, the goals and the results have just slowly, specifically the goals, have started to slow down a lot. Is it coincidence, Kieran, that with KDB and Rodri out, that the likes of Haaland just haven't been performing? Or is it just simply the fact, as you stated earlier, that Haaland actually had X amount percentage of XG today, and last week we all know he had the highest XG of any player in the history of the Premier League? Is it just pure the fact that you're just unlucky?
I think Haaland's a really tough one, right? Because I think it was Focal who posted he had 3 big chances again today. So that's 6 big chances in 2 games. That for any striker, you'd expect more than 1 goal from 6 big chances. So that suggests more of an issue with the player than the system necessarily.
Right.
But there's no taking away from the impact Rodri and KDB have and Odegaard have on a team, because they, more so Rodri and Odegaard than KDB over the last couple of years on this next point, where they're ever present. Yes, you have players that are their second choice that can kind of step in for them, but those people know their second choice and know that they're not going to be starting games. So in all of the training drills, in terms of how all the other players build their games and look for those passing options, they all know Martin Odegaard. They all know Rodri. They know where he'll be. They know where he likes the ball. They know the speed to pass it at. They know where to move afterwards and where he'll be looking for. And it almost becomes autopilot because they do it week in, week out in training. When you lose that player and you put in another player, no matter how good they are a different player. Whether it's they control it with their left foot compared to their right foot, where they like it a yard in front of them or 2 feet. All of these things have a massive impact on it. And it's not something when you're a team at the level of a Man City or a level of an Arsenal where you have to play fast, where you have to play autopilot. It's very hard to adjust to those things. And it's just naturally going to have an impact where no matter how good the replacement is, they're not that player who connects automatically with the rest of the team. So you're just going to see a drop-off, particularly with anyone who's central. I think if it's players that are playing wide, you get away with it. But whenever you lose your central players that are almost in that key areas of the pitch that control everything, that's really when you're going to see the rest of the team suffer.
I'm just looking at the results today, and I always ask Ray or anybody that joins me as a guest, which are the results that shock you? And to be completely frank, it is just the one. It is Bournemouth beating Man City. Massive result for you guys, despite the fact that you lost, I know, and that's even the more bigger frustration, I'm guessing, from Arsenal fans, that the one bloody day that you guys lose, Man City lose as well. Or more specifically, the one day that Man City lose, you guys lose. And I always remember that with Burnley when we were in the Premier League. Every time one of our bloody rivals lost, we're thinking, right then, we didn't expect them to lose that game. Now we can take advantage. Oh, we've lost. So nothing's happened. It's a bit like an FPL when you've got two different captain choices. And like, for instance, today, if Salah just got 2 points and Haaland got 2 points, you're like, so all that nonsense about which one's the better away from home and home is actually a waste of time. But anyway, whatever. But certainly Bournemouth beating Man City, quite an incredible result. Now, Bournemouth this year are at home specifically. They're very, 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 very good. And I'm just wondering, Kieran, have you seen anything in Bournemouth which is that you take away where you think they're slowly making the Vitality Stadium a fortress, and actually people should be a bit concerned because that's another big scalp that they've taken down there.
Yeah, there's something to be said about it, right? Where Iraola is clearly doing a fantastic job with Bournemouth, and the way he's instilling that belief into them, and the way that I guess the thing with Bournemouth is they make other teams uncomfortable. And it's where when you look at certain things, you can kind of see it. And by that, I mean like certain graphs or data things that we'll see on our timelines. You can see it on the pitch in every game. And one of them is Bournemouth are one of the top teams for winning possession back in the opponent's third because of how high they press teams, because of how uncomfortable they make them feel. And Iraola's not scared of doing that against a Man City or an Arsenal because sure, they have that ability to pass the ball through those lines and get straight up against your defence. But they also have that ability to pass the ball around your defence and find ways in. So don't worry about the worst case scenario. Focus on that upside. Focus on the fact that you could win the ball up against Man City in their own half and be straight in on goal and commit to it. And that's what he instills into those players where commit to it. And if they pass through you, not your problem. But I'm telling you, if you commit to it, you'll win that ball back and we're going to finish up from it. And you have more of that confidence when you're at home because fans love to see your players putting pressure on other players, chasing everything down and hearing them support you when it's tiring as they're playing it around the back, going side to side. And you're like, why am I chasing this player down? He's just going to pass it back to the keeper again. But your fans are cheering you on every time. It gives you that extra burst to keep going. So yeah, I do think with a team like Bournemouth that put that high press on teams, with the fans behind them cheering them on as they do it, we do need to start paying a lot more attention to it.
Absolutely. Obviously, Liverpool winning 2-1 today. I mean, I predicted 3-1. Ipswich Leicester, I predicted 1-1. It ended 1-1. Annoyingly, our Rory Delap did, or whatever his... Is it Liam or Rory? No, Liam Delap. Doing... Yeah. Is it Liam Delap or Rory Delap?
It's Liam, yeah. It's Liam.
Doing nothing. Surprise, surprise. Nottingham Forest, I think this is another result where I'm not shocked by Nottingham Forest winning. It's got nothing to do with that. The fact they scored 3 against West Ham. Do West Ham fans need to be thinking seriously about this? I can't pronounce this bloke's name. Lipatoglu, whatever his blasted name is. Do they need to sit down and think this isn't the right man for our job here, for this job? Because it seems that every single week West Ham seem to be in high-scoring games, usually at the wrong end of the result.
It's such a tough one. Lopetegui is a good manager. Whether or not he's the right manager for West Ham, I think it's way too early to tell because what he wants from the players and the system he plays is different to what a lot of them would have experienced before. And there's no way that you can impact that within 10 games. It's such a tiny, tiny amount of games to be able to see it. And during that period, he has been changing his players quite a lot. You know, similar to Arsenal, West Ham have been enjoying red cards during games as well, which isn't particularly useful as a manager when you're trying to start establishing things. So I don't know who West Ham would be able to get instead. You know, Lopetegui is a highly respected manager, and I think he's one of the ones where they've got Everton at home next. They've got Leicester coming up relatively soon. They've got Wolves coming up soon. They've got Bournemouth. So they've got a lot more of those winnable games. And if we actually look at their fixtures, like Forest are third in the Premier League. Forest have only lost one game this season.
Do you want to hear it?
Forest are the second best defence in the Premier League.
So, you know when what's his bloody name? Aspiro Santos. How do you pronounce his name again? The Nottingham Forest manager.
Nuno.
There we are, done. When Nuno took over, I said on stream, I think that Nottingham Forest are going to be now challenging for Europe. I was a season behind because now they're challenging for Europe. And I'm only basing that on the simple fact that how well he did for Wolves. He's got when he's in charge of a team, he does very, very well. And when he took over Tottenham, I mean, I'm probably speaking absolute twaddle like normal, but I think the team was just a bunch of individuals. Whereas he's now taken over Nottingham Forest, who are now a team. They buy into his system. They buy into what he wants to do. And like you stated, they're now third. Did you say they've only lost once this season? And they beat Liverpool 1-0 at Anfield. They're keeping clean sheets left, right and centre. Their FPL assets from a defensive perspective, like the likes of Anya, Sells, they're brilliant to jump on because they're cheap. And Nottingham Forest are one of those teams that are just, you just play their defenders every single week and you may, there's a decent chance that you're going to keep a clean sheet. I don't know how many clean sheets they've kept this season, but obviously I've just named 2 today and against Nottingham Forest. But certainly Nottingham Forest seem to be a team that are just going about their business and are actually performing really, really well. And they're not going to stay in the top 4. We know this. But do you think, though, Kieran, that a top 8, where potentially you could get a European spot, could happen this season?
Yeah. I think you'd be hard pressed to name 8 teams better than them this season. And like you rightly said, like, it's so hard when managers get the big gig, like Nuno did with Spurs, because it really damages people's viewpoints. But he again, it's kind of what I go back to on Lopetegui. Like, I don't know whether or not he's good enough yet. He's had 10 games. Well, Nuno was only given 17 games at Spurs, which is crazy. Like, how do you know if he's good or not there? Like, yes, his points per game were less than when he was Wolves manager, but surely that should give you hope that stick with him. This is someone who knows what he's doing, that was great at Porto, that left Spurs and went to Elite FPL and was a decent manager there as well. And yes, fine, it was, the best team in that league, but it's a manager who knows what he's doing and has quite a few different dimensions. And like you said, one who the players respect and the players buy into. So yeah, I think they'll do well. What's interesting about them is just how many draws they've had this season, because Thomas Frank is a manager that I really like over at Brentford, because he's got a philosophy that I've been speaking about with friends for quite some time, where he hates draws. Full stop. Thomas Frank hates a draw. He would rather lose the game trying to win than settle for a draw. Because if you go for the win, you gain 2 points and you're risking 1. So all you've got to do is win 1 in 3 of those draws and you break even. But you'll probably draw another one of them. Whereas Forest and Nuno are one that are quite happy with draws. And I think that's the mentality to keep you safe in the league. But to push on to challenge for Europe, you need to look at converting those draws and taking risks in some of those games.
It's the Sean Dyche / Sam Allardyce effect of, we just don't want to lose. The problem is that with any Sean Dyche team, specifically, especially at Burnley, it's, but the problem is that you don't have the quality of player to get the draws. You either lose or win. You just don't seem to be able to draw, but you lose more often than you win. Whereas Nottingham Forest, they have got the quality of player to see out the draws. And as you state, I think with Nuno, he's more than happy, like at the 85th minute, just to sit back, just sit deep, and just take the draw. Whereas people like Thomas Frank, or for argument's sake, Slot or Pep Guardiola, or even Brighton's manager, I forget his name. What's the Brighton manager's name?
Fabian Hosler.
They're willing to take those risks and try and get that winning goal. Just to quickly end with, I mean, we just mentioned Everton there losing 1-0. I actually expected this is the type of game that Sean Dyche would go out and win, and they did have a goal disallowed. In fact, they had 2 goals disallowed, I believe, today. And it ended up being 1-0 to Southampton. Not the greatest result for Everton, of course. But at the end of the day, this was a 6-pointer, as they say, and Southampton eventually came out on top. Wolves, again, in another... What was that line you always keep saying, the double pivot? You cannot continue conceding 2 goals at a rate a game. It's ridiculous. They concede 2 again. And it is quite ludicrous, isn't it? Wolves, the fact that you've already mentioned how they've won once in the last 58,000 games, and they're always conceding 2 goals, and again it happens. They end up drawing 2-2. A decent result, but in the sense of they didn't lose, but they should have really... the manager, Gary O'Neill, really should be targeting that match, as we really should be taking 3 points.
Yeah, I think they are much more in that case. Yeah, it's such a tricky one, isn't it? When you're looking at so many of the teams and how competitive the Premier League is right now. Like, again, you look at Arsenal and you look at Liverpool and City, and like we said, good draws, decent draws. But Liverpool, City and Newcastle, if we take those 3 games, if Arsenal had just gone all out in all 3 of them and just gone, we win or we lose, they'd have 3 points. Instead, they have 2. Right, so it's those kind of scenarios where those good draws against City and Liverpool are 4 drop points, whereas if you'd won 1 and lost 1, then you'd be in a better position. Yeah. And I think for teams that are struggling or more historically struggle, like a Nottingham Forest, the psychological impact of losing and having to bounce back from a defeat compared to not losing and getting a draw is something that maybe that's taken into consideration as to why some of those managers don't push on for it.
Absolutely. We'll just quickly cover tomorrow's fixtures. Spurs versus Aston Villa, the 2 o'clock kickoff. I think Aston Villa nick it, Kieran. I think that Unai Emery, the way he sets up in the big games, I think they're able to essentially control the opposition. And, I mean, you see they beat the likes of Bayern Munich. Last season they beat, Liverpool, you lot, and Man City game after one after the other. To be honest with you, I don't think Aston Villa are only fear going to the Tottenham ground, other than the fact that Tottenham usually are very good at home. Very rare that they lose at home. And I think Aston Villa and Unai Emery are targeting this and going, we can get at them here. And I think genuinely Aston Villa will come out on top. I've gone for 2-1 to Villa. Am I mad? No,
I'm along similar thought process. And this is where I always struggle about. I tend to find myself being quite unbiased on how I look at games, but then some definitely comes in when I look at Spurs games. And other teams where I'm like, yeah, but they're definitely going to let in goals. Loads of them, particularly under Ange, right? Like, we know he comes out and says it. He likes exciting games of football and he likes to entertain. So, yeah, I think we're definitely going to be in for a good 2 o'clock kickoff. I think it will be one that I will try and ensure that I'm at home to watch that game, because I see goals and I do hope for a Villa win. I think on the predictions when I was doing it with Shane, I went for a 3-2, which I don't necessarily think it'll be that high scoring. But just the way that Spurs will look to attack Villa, and particularly on the right, like Brennan Johnson should be so good in this game, because Villa are so bad defending on Villa's left-hand side that Brennan could be great. But at the same point, like with Van der Ven out, Tottenham are going to be so much weaker. So, yeah, I'd go with you. I feel both teams will score and Villa should be able to just about nick it, or it'll be a score draw. I think Spurs winning is probably the least likely for me, but it could obviously happen because they do still have players that can completely change it. Like if Son just takes control of that game, or even Maddison, then it can be a game that they dominate.
And then finally on to the Man United Chelsea game, where this is huge in the grand scheme of things. This is where we really are going to see if there's a new manager bounce. It's all well and good beating a full strength Man United team, beating a B side Leicester team 5-2 in the EFL Cup. But now it's Man United up against the informed Chelsea, who are, in my opinion, I think are looking really, really good from an attacking perspective. And I think the manager, whose name escapes me, another one whose name escapes me, is slowly, very, very, very slowly getting that balance of defence and attack right. Very similar to how Unai Emery is, to be honest with you. And I'm actually expecting this to be quite a good end-to-end game. I'm going with the 2-1 to Man United. I do think Man United do nick this. I'm going to go with the Man United result here, Kieran.
Yeah, no, it's one of those unknown things, right? When there's no manager, or even like Rude is someone who, like RVN, someone that a lot of people playing for Man U just will respect him for what he's done for the club and who he is as a person, and the fact he's been involved in their coaching. I do wonder how useful he's been as assistant manager, where he thought he'd probably get the job if the manager fails. But there is less pressure on any of the players' shoulders. Like, they are no longer playing to keep someone safe in their job. So they can just play football, regardless of what the coach says beforehand. Rude's not the guy going, you need to win this, we need to do that. He's someone that probably is saying, go out there, enjoy yourself. But at the same point, like you mentioned, Enzo's got Chelsea playing with an identity now, looking good, and playing Pedro Neto on that left-hand side.
Yes. Yeah.
That pass from Palmer last week, if that's anyone else, they're not getting onto the end of it. But Neto does, and it creates a fantastic goal. So, yeah, I think it'll be another good one. I think Sunday's probably going to be a good day for football. I think I'm probably less confident in United, just because I think Chelsea, with their identity right now, probably will have a bit more structure, and I think that will help them out in this game. Whereas I think United playing freely can be beneficial, but it also can leave potentially some spaces and some gaps for Chelsea to be able to exploit. And when you've got someone like Cole Palmer who can thread the eye of a needle, then they will get punished if they leave any of those gaps. So yeah, I think maybe a sort of 2-2 draw there. But again, it should just be a good one.
You're going to be hoping that your Sanchez comes through with some save points. Although I do think that Sanchez...
In a 2-2 draw, yeah, I'm in trouble there, aren't I, with him?
He seems to be plodding along with the save points every single week. It seems to be he gets a minimum of 1 save point. In fact, here's a question for you as a goalkeeper, in the sense of, I find that in the game, goalkeepers aren't rewarded enough for the amount of saves. Now, I'm sure it was Az that said on Juice that he thinks that after the initial 3 saves to get you 1 save point, for every save after that, they should get maybe another point, or maybe it goes down to just 2 saves per point. Do you find in the game that goalkeepers aren't rewarded enough for the work that they do? Because I don't think they get rewarded enough.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a case for it, because there's other components as well that, like, a keeper won't gain anything for, how well they do at claiming the crosses, etc. There's nothing that goes towards that, and we can't start changing those metrics, because then we'll start bringing in ball recoveries and tackles and so on and so forth. But I think with the modern game now, where most games, you're lucky if you see 4 or 5 shots on target from a team. Yeah, if it's taking 3 saves to get 1 save point, and you'd be lucky to have faced 6 shots on target in the game, it's really hard to get those 2 save points there. So yeah, I'd probably go with that latter option, where every 2 saves is worth the point. I don't know about the 3-1. The 3-1's an interesting concept, where after the 3, every save is worth a point. I haven't really given that any thought, but I think the 2-1 it's hard for people to argue against. No, but I like that as a concept, right? Because that is a nice concept. Whereas the 2-1 seems easy to implement, where no one will be upset with it. The over 3-1, where 1 counts as a save point, you can just see people getting absolutely furious with, that wasn't a shot, that was a long-range pass that dropped through to the keeper.
After today, and after this stream, got your team up on the screen. What's your immediate, like, so I've already told you about my Mazraoui and Garnacho. What's your immediate thought process regarding transfers for your team after today?
There was, so when I was on the bus earlier, I was playing around with it, and there is a world where I might take out like McNeil and Haaland for Isak and Salah, but I don't see too much value in bringing Salah in next week. Like, as in, I don't think it's absolutely necessary. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm not really in panic stations, even though it's been a bad week. And I guess sort of going back, one thing that I forgot to mention when we were talking about the mental health part, but there was a book that I read years ago called Solve for Happy that I'd recommend anyone reads. It's written by a guy called Mo Gawdat, who formerly was over at Google. And he and his son worked on the formula for happiness. And I'm not going to bore everyone with it, but sort of the key takeaways are happiness is when reality exceeds expectations. Depression is when expectations exceed reality. So I try to go into anything, particularly FPL, with relatively low expectations because it decreases the chance of depression and increases the chance of happiness. So sort of similar to that, where arguably when I look at a week that's been pretty horrific, when no player scored more than 2 points, none of them, and when you'd ask my team, I'd initially sent it without the points, they look great. Before the week, they looked great. Given their fixtures, given who the players are, it was great. I'm not going to panic too much. I'm just going to back myself in. They were good players. They still have good fixtures. If they did terrible one game, even though it doesn't work this way, hopefully next week they all do well. And I have one of those weeks that we all dream of. So it's sort of like, the peaks and troughs. So there's no panic station. There's no like critical issues in the team, apart from they're just not scoring me the points right now.
Yeah, hopefully our luck will change. I mean, obviously you've got Burmo and Visser on Monday. I'm not really expecting much from them. In fact, we didn't really touch on it, but I'm going with a Fulham win, edging it 2-1. Now, obviously Visser and Burmo could get something there, but I think that I find with Brentford that when they're away from... Again, you're more knowledgeable than me when it comes to this, but I find with Brentford that away from home, they're just basically saying we don't want to lose. We're just going to hit teams on the counter-attack. And with the game against Fulham, I just think that it's going to be a pretty flat, dull affair. I think Fulham, with the way they're playing at the moment, will just take advantage of that. And I think nick it 2-1, despite the history suggesting it'll be a very high-scoring game. Any thoughts on the Fulham-Brentford game?
Yeah, sort of similar. Like, Fulham are a great team, particularly at home. And I think that's always a concern when you look at Fulham, because they're, again, a team where defensively they set up very deep to limit oppositions to sort of taking shots outside the box, which is why Leno gets loads of save points at home. Does really well because here you are, have a shot from outside the box for me to catch, and very few chances in and around the box. But Brentford are the kind of team that just have that ability to get behind them, and also are the kind of team that you can expect Fulham will attack. Like, you can imagine Anthony Robinson being high up the pitch and Brentford being able to counter and get the ball into Mbumo with a lot of space behind. But it could also be one of those games where Fulham keep it really, really, really tight, and it's a really boring Monday game where it finishes sort of 0-0, 1-0 either way.
Hopefully.
I'm hoping for the latter, obviously, with the two Brentford attackers, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was a low-scoring game in that one. So I think it is one where it's either like a 2-2 type of game or a 0-0, 1-0 either way.
Well, last two, it's ended 0-0 and Brentford winning 3-0. And from my personal perspective, Brentford winning to 0 would be a fantastic result. Completely off subject, but I'm going to ask you anyway. So, when I met you for the first time in person was at FPL Juice's first football tournament they put on, and then they're going to be putting on their third one in November. Are you going to that?
I am. My fitness regime is starting tomorrow.
Oh, you're playing?
Yeah, I'm gonna come out of retirement again. I played the first one,
brilliant. Yeah.
And then was a little bit injured from a car crash on the second one. But now I'm just overweight and unfit, so there's no excuse if I can just get up in the morning and go for a couple of runs.
So you'll be in goal like Roberto?
I should be back in goal. Yep. which surprisingly, and I don't know if I mentioned this to you after, but playing in that first five-a-side tournament, that was the first time I played football in about 6 years after all my knee surgeries. And it was really good. It felt really good to be back out there. The next day, I felt horrific. And to the extent I couldn't get out of bed. You know when you've got pain across your entire body? So in my head, I thought, here's a way that I can get out of bed without it hurting. Let me use my head as a pivot. So I'll push my head into the bed and it should arch my back. That doesn't work. And I have a friend who's a physio, and he came round and he helped out with a few tight muscles. And I started explaining all the pains I had in my body. I went, so what's wrong? And he looked me in the eyes and he went, you have a shit core. You're unfit. I'm like, all right, thanks, mate. Thanks a lot. So, I'm going to try and work on that before doing it again. Because it turns out at 36, throwing yourself to the ground and getting up again 30 times isn't something you can just roll out of bed and do anymore.
Because they said, didn't they, that they're going to be doing a draft system this year, so people are going to be put in random teams rather than being specific for... So, for instance, when you were playing, it was for Black Box, wasn't it? Or Scout?
That's right, yeah. I think it was Black Box. I think they're trying to make it more fair. So they're asking people to rate themselves on their own ability. Now, my issue with that is people who are very good tend to be very humble. And you get people who are delusional, who think they're better than they are. So it's going to be an interesting blend of people, even with that format.
Yeah, because I'm encouraging now anybody. I've just seen Booners here. Hello, mate. Anybody that wants to support independent content creators and also wants to go out for a really good day out, come along. It's at Mill Hill Power League, and they're looking for players. So if you are interested, head over to FPL Juice's website /FPL Juice's X account, and all the details will be there. Get signed up, and it's not an exclusive thing. It's for anybody that wants to come along. Because let's get real here, Kieran. They're actually really, for what was it, 5-6 hours? It's a really, really good day out, isn't it?
Oh, it's really good. Like I wasn't well enough to attend or to play in the second one, but I came down. I joined you. I saw you doing a lot of the commentary there, and I think that's the key part. Even if you're not looking to play, but you want to just go for a couple of hours, see a few people that maybe you've met before, some you haven't. It's the same atmosphere as anything I've been to FPL related. You know, people are genuinely there to have a laugh with each other. No one takes themselves too seriously. You know, yes, the odd person might be a bit more competitive than other people there, but 99% of people aren't. So we will all laugh at that person who's getting overly competitive and complaining at the ref. So yeah, it's a really good day out, and it really is open to people of all ability. Like genuinely, I think I spent the final game lying on the ground and crawling across the goal. So honestly, you will be in better shape than I am most likely. So I would encourage you to come along. We'll have rolling subs, and it's just a really, really fun day, and you'll get to meet some people, have a good laugh.
Yeah, I think Alf's going to be. I think he said on his stream the other day that he's going to be doing some form of commentary or something like that. They normally just with me go take the microphone and lead. I'm like, yeah, sure. And just literally, it's just throw me ahead into the headline. I'm hoping Nick's going to be turning up this year, but isn't Ash? Ash is injured, isn't he? This year he's not going to be playing. I'm sure
he's saying. I think it's what he's saying is an injury. I think after Juice being eliminated in the group stages from both the last two tournaments, he probably is just looking for another club or to not be associated with them anymore. They're like, Ash, you have to play for us unless you're injured. Right, well, I'm injured. I am injured.
It's ridiculous, isn't it?
The thing is, some of the teams, like their team, they had some really good players on there, but that's part of the fun of it all. Like, it's the same as anything. You don't have to be the best there. Sometimes things go your way. And they also have some really fun rules there as well where, and again, I recommend people go and just click on a few of the past streams of it. But there's one rule where you send a player from the other team off the pitch to go eat a cookie made by Delia, which you won't get that in a normal game of football.
Well, I've got some positive news for you, talking of which. Gary, FPL Have a Beer, is saying, I need to get Kieran on for an interview. Do it, is all I will say. Just do it. Good evening, Dally Pool. Still doing well in the YouTube chat league, I see. I don't see, to be honest, but I did see that you're still doing exceptionally well. I think it's like 1,000th in the world. Kieran Dallypool is a long-serving supporter of the channel, and what do we call it here? Roberto saying here, Gary, I find conversations around FPL in terms of the way our mind works really interesting. And yeah, I do think that, again, we don't want to harp on about it, that if we actually just went with our own personal gut instincts, we would be better off. And like I said, going through the maths here, I'd probably be about 190k, which is just ludicrous rather than 1.2. But anyway, Kieran, tonight has been a blast. I'm not going to lie. I've really, really enjoyed it. I really appreciate you stepping in for Ray. Do you want to just quickly tell people, if they did enjoy your work tonight, where they can find you, basically?
Yeah, of course. And no, I've really enjoyed this as well. So thank you for the invite and for having me on as well. And apologies to everyone for not getting to see my beautiful face today. But hopefully I'll be invited on next time, and we'll find a way of making that happen. But you can find me mainly on Twitter or X at FPL_discomfort. And as was mentioned, myself and my friend Shane, FPL Veteran, have a podcast that we typically do every Thursday, where we just go straight live on YouTube, which is _the double pivot, both on Twitter and on YouTube itself.
And just let people know that Shane is the Scottish guy that does the constant office and extras quotes with me when we do the watch-alongs. Just so, for anybody listening in, Shane isn't just some random bloke. It is Shane A.K.A.
He is a random bloke to most people, though, and still to me.
I'll be doing...
Do you know what I criticise about him? I stayed with him. We got an Airbnb together for Gameweek 39 last year, and he drives down to England quite often for his job. And he drives with about 80 bottles of Highland Spring water in there. And he told me, you can't drink any water unless it's Highland Spring. Ever since he gave me a couple of bottles of that, he's right. I now only can buy Highland Spring water. So
I think that's
I'm not
the
happy
worst.
with that. Yeah, see, maybe it's... I don't know why I'm now addicted to it. I think he might have drugged that first bottle. I think I'm now half Scottish.
I think, personally, Evian is by far the best bottled water you can get. Now, funny enough, I mean, I could probably... do I dare show this on camera? Yeah, why not? For anybody that even cares, I'm going to quickly move the camera around to the... there, if Christ, I'm going to break the camera. Maybe I won't do that. But yeah, I've got a water cooler in my bedroom now, and the water is basically zero pure, so it's about as pure as you can get, or something my mate was telling me. And I'm not going to lie, it does taste delicious, if you can describe water being delicious. Kieran,
isn't this exciting content? We've moved on to discussing the taste of water. Join us next week, where we will be doing blind taste testing of water.
Mate, have you seen next week's fixtures? It is grim reading for Saturday. I'll bring it up on screen, and I mean grim reading. When Mark Goldbridge was going through it earlier, I was just like, oh Christ. We have got on Saturday Brentford, Bournemouth. Oh yeah, because it's night fixtures, isn't it? There probably won't be. In fact, there won't be a Saturday night reaction. So yeah, it annoys me when they do this, when they've got 2 evening kickoffs, Brighton, Man City, and then Liverpool versus Aston Villa. In fact, I'll just ask you now, what are your thoughts on captaincy next week? I know you've got Haaland, and I know you said you're seriously thinking of bringing in Salah. Who are you thinking for captaincy next week?
Yeah, it doesn't look good really for anyone, does it?
Garnacho at home to Leicester.
That's not a bad shout. In fact, yeah. Do I just captain Nuria at home to Southampton? Do you know what? I genuinely might, right? With what we've been talking about today about having fun, maybe I can be one of those clickbait people, and after this show I go on X and say, if I get 100 likes, then no, I won't. You'll never find me doing that, because I know that's how I get muted by Steve-O. And but no, I think I'll probably be Haaland if I still own him, because I'm an idiot and I'm a sucker for punishment.
I do know that Haaland's history against Brighton's good. I do know that much. So maybe he could be the one. I'm also tempted, Kieran, to do another Sunday stream for the Man United, Leicester, Nottingham Forest, Newcastle, Spurs, Ipswich. If I could find
You'll have to if you own two
Man.
Man U players. You'd have to if you own two Man U.
Well, this is exactly it. It's a possibility. But I'm going to need someone to join me. It may end up being you again if you can. To be completely frank. But anyway, we could be waffling on all night here. Kieran, I really appreciate you coming on. Thank you very much. And for anybody that has joined us live throughout the evening, really do appreciate you joining us and interacting as per normal. If you are completely brand new around here, please make sure you are hitting the subscribe button and make sure you're hitting the like button as well. Also, let myself and Jason/Kieran know what you thought of the show tonight. Just leave your feedback in the comment section after the stream. If you want to support the show, we have got a Patreon. It's there. It's at Elite FPL. And other than that, I can't think of anything else other than you can join myself and Jason tomorrow for Sunday surgery. Cheers all, and thank you, Kieran.